That's awesome. I want to switch the topic a little bit from your start to being Asian American, being specifically Vietnamese American in the cannabis industry. I'm Chinese. I know Asian culture is very anti-drugs. How was it for you in your, I'm assuming since you're from Southern California, there was a Vietnamese community that you're a part of. Like, how was that for you growing up? And how was it coming out to your parents and your community?
Yeah, it was super, it was, I mean, it was big. And I still remember the day that I told my parents and I, stated my case that weed was great. Weed helps me out and weed actually makes me a better person. But growing up, it was really hard. My parents came over here before the fall of Saigon, and them trying to build a new life in another country made them, want the best for their kids. They wanted to be able to give them everything, but at the same time, they were afraid of breaking the law. They were afraid that the government might do something, change something about their lives. And being from Southern California, I remember that going through our Vietnamese ethnic town of Westminster, there was a huge communist protest at the time, and seeing effigies of Ho Chi Minh being burned in the city squares, city squares or like big major intersections, it was pretty scary. My dad never really telling me what he did, hiding a lot of his notable achievements because he was afraid that if things caught wind, he would, the backlash would affect him. And so it was really hard to get to that point where I could talk to them about drugs, talk to them about American culture that didn't involve, no, you can't do that kind of thing. Yeah. But over time, I think what actually broke that stigma for me, that cannabis wasn't wrong, cannabis wasn't wrong, was when I started hanging out with this Korean. And it was the best, because up until that point, every time I smoked or tried to smoke, I got super paranoid. Somebody would call me, they would ask me a bunch of things, and all of a sudden my anxiety levels go up the roof. And nobody likes that when they're smoking. But my Korean friend would tell me to come over, and we would spend hours and hours playing video games and getting high. And I remember talking to his Korean mom, and I remember Koreans growing up in my particular town, there was a lot of Koreans, and I was always afraid of their moms. Just always scared the crap out of me. You know what I mean? So being in that environment, being high, being able to talk to his mom, being able to interact on a high level, changed my views on acceptability. And that's what really pushed forward with me wanting to smoke, me wanting to appreciate it more.
Have your parents tried yet a topical or a CBD or a gummy or anything yet?
Yeah, my mom's tried a topical when she got a burn. She didn't like it. And I mean, I think it was like, no matter what she put on or no matter what she used, she was not gonna like it. But my older sister, who has been pretty adamant against it for most of her life, she has started to ask me for some edibles, and it's good. I'm happy to see her do that.
I always go with it's like Tiger Balm. It helps with aches and pains, like Tiger Balm. And yeah, my parents have been very open to it lately as well. So it's really nice to see the change that's happening, because I don't think many people know there's such a big stigma in our culture because of the opium wars that happened in the 1800s. And also the heroin and opium that was being run through Vietnam during the Vietnam War. So our cultures are very, very anti, and they group everything as drugs, which is unfortunate because, we have such a long history of plant healing and cannabis has been the earliest recorded in our textbooks of plant medicine. So I'm hoping very much, and there's people like you that are helping to educate communities and, you know, teaching our family and our communities that this is not heroin, this is not opium. It's a different type of plant, and it offers different types of healing. I have a question about being Asian in the underground. Do you think it was helpful or harmful with your business in the underground?
You know, I always try to see the positive side of things. And so I don't know how it could have harmed me. I knew there was a couple ways that it was definitely helpful. Me being Asian, I mean, like, what are the stereotypes of Asian people is that they're harmless, that they don't, I mean, to an extent, they may not know a lot, right, about certain things. And so I think the harmful thing is that, you know, despite my background or despite my experience in the industry, like, I'm still considered fresh, and people will still consider things fresh, me fresh. But you know, I also think because in general, Asians are more modest, they're more humble about things. And so their sense of like pushing forward may not be the same. I mean, and even in the short, when, like, me being Asian, me having like Asian eyes, like squinty eyes, I think was actually pretty helpful, because instead of people thinking I was stoned all the time, people just thought I was Asian. And being in like Chicago or New York, where there's, you know, I mean, good amount of non-Asians, that's what I assumed. And so, like, I never really got questioned for looking so stoned or looking so distant. You know, I always had a good excuse, like, oh, you know, just so focused on this project, or I'm thinking forward or something. And I think because same thing, like being harmless, not actually smoking weed, because of the stigmas we faced growing up, that we were very anti-drug. People assumed that I wasn't into drugs, and that's cool. That helped me out a lot.
I have a very similar experience too. It's definitely helped out of some hairy situations. But what advice would you give other Asians, Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, East Asians who want to enter the cannabis space but are still afraid to?
Do it. Don't doubt yourself. Have confidence with your decisions. You know, we've always been good with due diligence, and it's about being accountable in this space. With that in mind, also, it's about like, we're resourceful. We've always been very resourceful folks. One thing I would definitely recommend, if like you don't know anything about these companies or you don't know where to start, I would suggest looking up BCC, the Bureau of Cannabis Control. Everyone's license is on that website. If you wanted to get into cultivation, you could search up cultivation licenses, distro, delivery, retail, shit like that. Everything's out there. And I would say that's a great start. When I was fresh into the game and I wanted to meet some folks, I had a gummy product, and I basically just sent an email to everybody, saw who clicked, built conversations and relationships like that. And yeah, that's one recommendation.
That's a great tip. What made you decide to transition out of the underground into the regulated space? We have many folks in our audience, in our community in New York, who have been running their game very successfully in New York. And now that it's been written as legal, a lot of people are considering going into that space. What made you decide to move out of the underground?
Honestly, it was on the cusp of legalization. Moving out of the East Coast and back to the West Coast, I moved back to Los Angeles, and I wanted to legitimize a courier service I was doing out there. So it was primarily just delivery work, no more cannabis. And when I came back to California and I saw what cannabis was like, you know, I was visiting these, great traditional market shops that, you know, sold whatever they put their name on, right? And I was like, at this point in my life, like I made money with weed. I loved making money with weed, but it was more than that. It was about the plant and about how the plant can offer benefits to people in general. So the whole like shiny coin suddenly disappeared, and now I was like searching for knowledge and truth. And so transitioning into the space was more so that I could grow outside of just delivery. I wanted to get into cultivation, and I wanted to learn how these plants were so amazing.
And what were some of the things that you did to transition? Like what were there things that you reached out to, organizations, books? What are some of the resources that you used?
My favorite thing I love to tell my partner for life whenever she asks a question is, have you tried to Google it? And I think it's pretty big because, like, I mean, being a bike messenger and then transitioning to a recreational cannabis space, it was a pretty new thing. And my partner, she's been in the industry for almost 20 years now. And so I felt like I needed to do a lot, and I needed to learn a lot. So, you know, started researching a lot, but more so, I had to figure out the way in, right? I had to figure out my foot in the door. And the foot in the door was stepping into a trim room with a bunch of people and start trimming weed. It's not the most glamorous job, and a lot of people think it might be the bottom of the barrel. But to me, I was so excited. I'm still so excited. And that's probably a big reason why I have my job right now, is because I love trimming weed. I love how beautiful cannabis can come out. Being a trimmer is the first step before it gets to first step in the grand scheme of things to get weed to the consumers. So it was, so yeah, trimming was a way. And I wasn't very good at first. Like, I was definitely doing terrible numbers. And when I say terrible, like in a good day, trimmers can make, like, ideally is like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. And at the time I started, I think I was only doing like 1/3 of a pound. I remember it was 225 grams. And I remember that number because my partner didn't do that. And she had her 1.5 pounds and she was having a great time. And I'm sitting there just like, why is this not looking as nice? And why is this not as heavy? And the frustration that I went through, only to realize that, yeah, it's a skill set. Yeah, I got to do it again, and I got to keep doing it again until I get better. And eventually, after 2-ish years being a trimmer, I moved from my 225 grams to doing 2.5, sometimes even 3 pounds. Like, being able to do 1,300 is a pretty big number, and I'm pretty proud that I've done it a few times. So,
damn. Yeah. But I think that also speaks to like your passion and the humility. You know, a lot of people want to jump into the cannabis space and think they're going to get X, Y, and Z amount of money, and they're going to be right at the top of the food chain. And I think, you know, being humble and honoring the plan and honoring the folks that came before you and learning, right? The fact that you started off with 220 grams and you're still able to, you know, jump to 3.5 pounds is a pretty big statement. So, you know, thank you for taking that time to learn and being passionate about that and putting the work in and rolling up your sleeves. You know, we very much love and honor folks that do that because it shows dedication and it shows respect. What are some